Being part of a mastermind has its innate benefits, one of which is gaining perspective from thought leaders in various industries. In today's episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook, we've done just that. We've put together a mastermind episode taking a handful of the best insights. This episode is jam-packed with valuable information you'll be able to apply immediately. Let's dive in.
When you went all in on this leadership coaching adventure, Did you have a backup plan by chance, Emily?
I mean, my backup plan was to go and get another quote unquote real job, right? So I knew I was hireable. I knew I had good experience and a good resume. So that was my backup. But I basically set myself up financially and otherwise to give this thing a run for a year. And I was like, okay, I can do it for a year and I have to make that year count. And towards the end of that, I would decide if this was going to work or if I needed to go back to, kind of corporate role.
Emily, what was so compelling about what you just described, the two people? Tell us, how did their careers or their lives change where it inspired you to do this as your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it was looking back and saying what was actually rewarding and fulfilling. And look, I did quite well in my career. I climbed the ladder very fast and I had high accomplishments and did all those things. And those were great. I loved helping companies and helping the teams, but I could have easily played that game for another few decades and then looked back and said, oh my gosh, what did I do? And I don't have time to do anything else in the same way that I can now. And so it was a series of circumstances, but there was that moment where I sat down and I said, if I'm, 60, 70, 80 years old and I'm sitting on the porch in a rocking chair and I'm looking back and saying, what do you regret? I would have regretted not trying. So even if I went to coaching and it quote unquote failed, that's scary to me. But sitting in that rocking chair and not knowing and not having time to do anything scared me more. And so I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference. And I love coaching and I know that my clients get value from it and I get to do that all day long.
Nice. What is the actual role of a chief of staff? Because not every company has one. So tell us a little bit about their mission and why companies employ these wonderful folks.
Yeah. So chief of staff, there's no one type of chief of staff, but an analogy I like to use, there's a couple. So, the plastic thing on top of a 6-pack can of soda?
Yes.
That plastic thing that holds all the cans together is like a chief of staff. So the chief of staff holds the executive team together. So they report to their principal, which is typically the CEO, and they also work very closely with the executive team. So they're keeping everyone focused, on point, resourced correctly, and then they're part of that strategic discussion, but they're also operationalizing strategy. So they're tactically executing strategy across the organization. So you have a COO, who is in charge of all things operations. You have the CTO, technology, CFO, finance, etc. Chief of staff sees across all of those departments. So they're writing above department lines and they're basically, I would smoke jump into different departments and coordinate a whole bunch of company-wide initiatives. So there's the plastic thing on the 6-pack can of soda. There's a Swiss Army knife of the executive team. Someone used that analogy. I thought that was great. And then the third one I'll give you is that of an air traffic controller. So if you think about an airport and one of those big tall towers where the guy with the binoculars and headsets is coordinating with the planes, you come in here, this runway is full, divert over here. They're coordinating with the airlines and ground crew. That's what a chief of staff does for business. They don't own the airport per se. They don't own the airlines, but they are coordinating everything about it to make sure people are running safely and running on time.
And Emily, what would you say the key difference is between a chief of staff and a very high level executive assistant, for example?
Very high level. Yeah. So chief of staff and EA get a little bit confused. So EA, which are critically important to businesses and organizations, they're more, I want to say, administratively tactical, like clerical work, such as going through emails, files, taking minutes, sorting notes, doing PowerPoints, coordinating calendars, all of those types of things. Critically important, The chief of staff role is much broader and it's also much more strategic. So an EA wouldn't be helping decide if we're going to do this merger or acquisition. They wouldn't be helping to roll out the benefit plan and wouldn't be working on the product rollouts and how do we market our new service. So those are the types of things that a chief of staff would be working on. Chiefs of staff work very closely with EAs or executive assistants. And sometimes I've seen a chief of staff have EAs reporting to them, but they're very, very separate roles.
I bet. You being a high-level leader yourself, and probably by now having dealt with hundreds of leaders across different organizations, whether you're coaching them or you were in those roles, how do you define effective leadership? And what are like some core principles that you believe every leader should embody?
That's a big question. So the first thing I'd say is leaders today have to be adaptable. So the only constant is change, and you have to be adapting at macro levels and middle levels and direct levels. Let me explain that. So macro, if you're a CEO of a company or a founder, you have to know what's going on in the world. We're so interconnected today. You have to know what's going on in the economy. You have to know what's going on in your industry. Is there technology that is game changing your industry? Is there a competitor coming up that's offering something you don't? So there's those larger perspectives. And then there's also, all right, like how do I adapt to this team meeting and this audience versus the one I'm going to talk to next? So as CEO, you could be talking to investors, potential fundraising activities, and then you could be talking at an all staff meeting. So maybe some of those topics are the same, but a lot of times those messages are different and what it means to people is different. And so you have to be able to not only adapt and adjust the content of what you're saying, but also your delivery to make that effective and to make it land to your listener and audience the way you intend. So there's kind of those things. And then it's little interactions you have all throughout the day. So we're on calls, we're on Zoom, we're on Slack, we're on text. And are you adapting to the people and to the circumstances that you're in? A lot of leaders are like a bull in a china shop and they're like my way and my stuff and they have no awareness of what's going on around them. So I think that would be the first thing that I would say is you have to be adaptable as a leader in today's world.
Right. I think the old school bull in a china shop unfortunately doesn't work anymore.
No,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to really influence and get folks to understand why. And why is it good for the organization? Why is it good for them and their careers to get them to do any deep work, I would think, right?
Well, just to tag on to that real quick, I think that's important because, back in the day when people were doing factory work on conveyor belts, you were paid to produce this many widgets in an hour or in a day. Today, we pay people to think and to have ideas and to provide solutions and to come up with something creative from their unique vantage point. Because CEOs, they play their role and that's all well and fine. But the customer service rep who's talking to customers every freaking day, if you don't think they have good information, if you don't think what they have to say is important, you're missing the mark there. So huge. I think having that understanding is important too. And one
of my favorite sayings is perfection is the enemy of done. Yeah. Right? I don't know where I got it from, but it's just you get nothing done. You spend, in an agile world, you can spend, 3 months on a project and then not check in often enough or try to perfect it. And now something's changed. Yeah. And it's going to emotionally destroy you as a professional who cares about your work, who's just put every inch of everything they had to make it perfect. But really, we didn't want perfection. We wanted 80%, like you said. We wanted it out to get feedback on this MVP or whatever it was, so we can make the corrections or the tweaks needed to get it to the next level. Let's talk a little bit about last couple questions, leadership in high pressure environments, because I find this to be extremely relevant right now with, I'm a positive leader and I like positive leaders. I like to be around them. I like to be them. But right now, many companies, whether they show it or not, are in high pressure situations, right? They can say all the nice things. They could be as positive or not, but handling these high pressure situations could make or break whether you retain your team, but also on the worst end, whether whether you can survive this next year or so. Like, what are your thoughts on how to balance being a positive leader in a high pressure situation while getting the message across to your team that work needs to get done and we need to move and we need to be quick and we need to be urgent and agile. And this is not the time to chill and mellow out and kind of go about your day in a 9-to-5 mindset, you know?
The first thing I would say if you're in a high pressure situation is to breathe. Like literally like get oxygen into your brain. People forget to breathe and then they're like, why am I making a bad decision? It's because your brain isn't working properly. Yeah. So like literally breathing helps get oxygen to your muscles and to your brain. And then I would say in terms of the communication piece, which is key, I would get yourself sorted first and say, all right, I have this decision that I need to make. Objectively speaking, let me zoom out for a second. What's the best way to make this decision? So don't make a knee-jerk emotional kind of, I'm just kind of doing what I feel like in this moment. All right, let me take this holistically. What are some important factors I need to look at here? Where are some areas I need more information or more data? Where could I ask for someone else's opinion or input to help me make this decision? Take a moment, take a beat, take a pause, breathe, and say, how do I make this decision best? Then once you have made that decision or when you are in the process of making that decision, communicating that to your team is critically important because people aren't stupid. They know a decision's on the table and they're like, which way is he going to go? Which way is she going to go? And if you're communicating, hey, look, this is on the table. Here's how we're thinking about this. Here's what we're looking at. If you have some relevant information, I'd love to hear from you because you might have a different perspective, but here's what we're looking at. And to be very honest and transparent and candid with you, I would like the company to have these things. I would like us to have a different PTO policy. I would like us to have a different maternity paternity policy. In order to get those things, we need to accomplish X, Y, and Z. So I want us to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and then I want us to be able to reinvest in our people and reinvest in our company and community, et cetera. And just being that upfront with people. They understand that. They might not like you don't have the PTO policy now, but they understand. And they're like, okay, we have to hit X, Y, Z in order to get what we want. So I think taking time to make a good decision and setting yourself up well to do that. Don't just blaze through that. And then take the time to communicate to people. One, they'll appreciate it. Two, they'll be more productive and effective in their role. Because if someone is sitting there with uncertainty and with, oh my gosh, my job might go away. Well, they're not operating at full capacity. They're sitting there at like 60% and all their energy is going to worrying. If you can help alleviate some of that, then you're helping out your team.
Emily, you used the word transparency. Huge. Sometimes you move in certain ways and you don't know if people even notice, if they even care, if they even appreciate. As my team became more and more senior and more mature, the biggest compliment they'll pay is like what I love about HireCloud, which is one of my companies, is the fact that it's so transparent. I mean, we put stuff up on the board. We'll tell people in a very calm fashion is like, hey, Q1 compared to last year we're down by 4%, 8% is not good. We got to get back on track. Here's some of the things that we need you to do. Here's some of the things we're doing. People have to understand that. So transparency is massive. And there was always a fear, right? If you put the fact that, hey, we're not doing as well, people could panic and freak out and leave. But I've seen the opposite, right? Yeah. The unknown is what scares people and worries them, and they make up stories and they come with all. When you're just honest, they're like, well, I guess if they're always honest, then they'll be honest if I should worry, right? When you and I spoke, I think we talked about the importance of connecting with authenticity to unlock breakthroughs. Tell us about like a personal moment with one of your customers that when you found that kind of thing, it transformed their leadership.
Let's see. Well, one of my clients, she did hire me to support her starting her own business. And really, when we got down to the root of it, it was the relationship she had with her boss that wasn't working. So before we started coaching and unpacking the layers and really looking at what it actually, what her experience actually was and what it wasn't, it just was the quality of the relationship with her boss. So she thought, oh, I should start my own firm. I should be out on my own, which is great. Yet before we work on that plan and that strategy together, I want to make sure we're working on facts and actuals and not the limitations or the stories our belief system makes up. And I'm so glad we did with her, because what we really discovered is she had a challenge and a struggle with being honest and setting boundaries. And so she let her boss treat her a certain way. It's not as though he was necessarily a tyrant or toxic or, a micromanager, whatever you want to call him. It was also, sure, he could have been that, he might have been that. Yet the piece we can only work on is her. We can't change her boss. We can't change the environment, but we can change her and how she approaches and how she addresses the quality of it. So when we looked at it, her being authentic was her speaking her truth and having honest, clear conversations with him to simply let him know how she was feeling and how his behavior, if you will, was impacting her productivity, her engagement, her performance with her team, how she was leading her team. And really, that was not a easy thing for her to even talk about at first.
How did it turn out?
Oh, she addressed it, because what we discovered through our coaching is that she's never really been honest with anyone in her life except for her friends, like her close group of friends. And so she saw that was an issue that she needed to break through. And so we just created some simple steps, and one step at a time, because honesty, transparency, especially when we're making up stories that we're going to hurt someone's feelings, or it's going to generate a bad or unfruitful result. Like in her case, I might get fired with being honest with my boss. So we went step by step to peel it back. And yes, she ultimately, and these conversations were not explicit, hey, I feel XYZ around you. It was, what's layer one? What can we find out about him or about you in layer one? And then get the data, come back and workshop it, and then go deeper and then deeper. And then really what's crazy now is they're actually friends. They still work together. And she started a side business, which she is completely honest and transparent about with her company, because she has a whole Instagram page around it, because it was always something that she wanted to do. And so what we created for her was a win-win. She was able to explore that opportunity of going out on her own, and she was able to, what we call, clean up that relationship with her boss, which was really cleaning up that relationship she had around the stories she was making up about hurting other people's feelings, and about, when I am honest, bad things happen, rejection, termination, or causing, other people to feel a certain way. So it was quite interesting, the journey.
Sounds like she was making a kind of a gut decision to start a company, not because she wanted to start a company or she was passionate or whatever it was. She was doing it almost to run away from a boss she wasn't communicating well with. And I'm sure most of it was on him. Maybe some of it was on her. But what a great opportunity to kind of, like you said, clean up that relationship, make the best of it. And it sounds like they're both winning. So that's a testament to you stepping in and unpacking and cleaning. You hear this word a lot, authentic leadership. What does it actually mean at a deep level? Why is it a game changer for those that are authentic leaders or learn to become authentic leaders?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the game changer, because really all leadership is about leading other people. Sure, as founders, as entrepreneurs, we're also leading the product, we're leading the service, but really at the core, we're leading other people. Even those who are listening who are solopreneurs, and maybe you don't have a team. You do. You might have a tech person, you might have, someone who handles your books or your legal. So you do have a team. And really the authentic piece really, really supports, because when I or you or anyone listening can be myself, when I'm running my business, delivering my business, sharing, whether it's pitching, proposing my business, and I am not faking it, I am not performing, I am not trying to do it the way other people do it, even though they are successful at doing it, I'm doing it in a way that is authentic and organic to me, so that, when I am booked, when I do get hired, I am delivering the same product. So whatever the product is, or whatever I said in that proposal or pitch, whatever it is, that it matches. And what happens is when we don't show up authentic as leaders, we tend to operate from a space of reaction rather than from a grounded space of our vision and our values. And so we constantly got to keep up the performance of reacting because we never set the base of authenticity. This is who I am. This is how I show up. Sometimes I get big energy. I'll speak loudly and I use certain words, but you know that because I'm sharing this with you up front and it's how I consistently show up. So you're not going to be surprised and I won't have to react to you reacting to me reacting because I'm being exactly who I am. And really that starts with our vision of who we are, not what our company is. Because a lot of leaders forget that, even when you're starting out. Yeah. Who are you first, as the leader, as the founder? What does that mean? And then even that question you asked me in the beginning, like, what's the journey? How did you get here? What is important to you about going on this journey? Because you and I both know the journey of being a founder or an entrepreneur, it is not, and yeah, it's a roller coaster. And so when we are clear on who we are and we worked on our vision of who we are and then that of the company, authenticity naturally happens because we are operating from a space of we know what we want, we know why we're doing it, and it's unfolding that way. And we can use that vision to be our base and our beacon to continue operating from as we scale, as we grow, as we go through turbulence and as the roller coaster goes down a twisty hill.
Being authentic for me, it's like having, a company has core values that hopefully you live by. I think as humans, we have to have our own core values, our red lines, our willingness to walk away. I mean, we all want to be liked, but hopefully we don't need to be liked because being a leader is tough. If you just do everything to be liked, then you're going to be in trouble very quickly. And I guess a question for you that's important too is many leaders feel overwhelmed by the pressure to be perfect or to be this amazing person for their team, especially in a generation where young people are being fed propaganda, frankly, if I could be honest, right? They're being told what they should demand of their workforce and what their boss needs to be. And it's really funny. It never turns it around and says, hey, you also should be on time and focused and work when you're at work. And it doesn't do that, right? It's very one-sided. It's propaganda. So there's that pressure on leaders to not only perform, not only to employ folks, not only to eat last, take care of their team, but to also always feel like they're perfect. How do you, when you're coaching people, how do you coach these leaders to navigate these feelings and be vulnerable enough to understand that this is a thing, but be strong enough to stand by their own values?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was listening to one of your other episodes with Emily and she was sharing about perfectionism, was led to one of her failures. And the first thing I share, because perfectionism is one of our top ways we compromise our self-worth, and it's one of our top leadership insecurities, perfectionism. And so the first thing I let people know is there's nothing wrong or bad about trying to be perfect. And what if you looked at it as you being passionate, that you care so much about your product, your service, your clients, your industry, whatever, you're aiming for. You care so much about it that you want it to be perfect, that you want yourself to be perfect. And we all know from day one, and it's been shoved in our face, there's no such thing as perfectionism or being perfect. And really, then we move on into, let's notice, are we using this word? How are we using this in our language, in how we talk to each other? Are we using it in our proposals, in our pitches, in our conversations with our clients? Make sure we're not setting that up for us to, unknowingly try to shoot for when it doesn't exist. So finding other words and ways to talk about what it is we really are aiming for. So, your guest Emily said excellence. I love excellence. I am always shooting for excellence. But have we defined excellence? We as leaders get to define whatever it is we're aiming for. Some leaders might be aiming for integrity or greatness or connect, whatever it is we're aiming for. The next piece is defining it. And then the piece after that is sharing it. So once we define it, and if you get real leaders co-define. They ask around, what does excellence mean to you? What does integrity mean to you? So we're not using one aspect or one perspective of a word or one aspect of a description. And then once we gather that and we land on what the description of excellence or integrity or mindfulness means, we share it. So what happens is we put it on our website, right? We have great mission statements on our websites, our core values are on our website. Yet have we really sat down and shared that with the team, with our people? And how is that baked in and woven into the way we talk about our clients, to the way our product delivers or the way our service delivers, what actually the result is or the output of the product or service? And now we are not wavering outside of values, core values, or anything like that, because A, we know what we're talking about. B, we defined it. And now C, we shared it. And we'll go further. D, it's integrated into ourself as a leader, into the team culture, into the product and service, and so on and so forth. Because otherwise, perfectionism, it catches all of us. Because perfectionism, another top leadership insecurity a lot of us have, or a trap we fall into, is comparison. I think I said it even earlier, like I used to do that about certain things with my clients, like, oh, we got to get the best result. And if we keep shooting for the best result, we miss all the other results that are in between where we are right now and the best result.
It's like living in the gap versus the gain. I don't know if you've read that book.
Oh, you are speaking my language. I love that book so much.
Good. I forgot the name of the book, but I think it was
The Gap and the Gain.
The Gap and the Gain. Great.
Yeah.
Because you easily can get into that trap. You focus on developing trust and self-worth. You talk about a lot in leaders. Can you share a story of a leader you coached and who experienced a breakthrough? And more importantly, what the hell does trust and self-worth in leaders even mean?
Yeah, it means everything. I mean, just think about when you think about being a leader and you're leading a team, that's all about relationships. The relationship you have with yourself and the relationship you have with your people on your team, your colleagues, your clients. You're not building, but you're in relationships all the time. And the number one aspect of being in a relationship is trust. I mean, think about relationship with partner, spouse, children, family. We want trust. We want a trusting relationship. We want to know we can count on you, you can count on me, and so on and so forth. And so the number one thing that leaders struggle with is trust. And it's specifically trusting themselves. And as an executive coach, I am, I guess, privileged that I get to know this, that people trust me enough to share this in our private conversations, because this is something most leaders will never talk about. They'll never admit to, they won't address because they're ashamed of it. And so all relationships are built on trust. And really the most overlooked one leaders and founders miss is that relationship they have with themselves, which is where the self-worth piece comes in. Because your trust it comes from your self-worth, your ability to understand how worthy and valuable you are. It has nothing to do with any feedback, any wins, any losses. It has nothing to do with how anyone treats you, because it's yours. Hence why it's called self-worth. There is no high self-worth. There is no low self-worth. You either are grounded in your self-worth or you are choosing to compromise it. And this concept is rarely talked about in leadership or founder circles, because what that means when we're compromising our self-worth, we tend to feel like an imposter. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough funding. I'm not polished enough. My pitch or my deck isn't slick enough, whatever, and not enoughness we're making up. And really what also comes with that is all of the other insecurities that, two of which we talked about: perfectionism, comparison, overworking our team or ourselves. So doing more, that's an insecurity. And another big one is people pleasing. So as I said in the beginning, we will yes people because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, when it's really us just protecting our feelings. And so the reason a lot of my work is focused on trust and self-worth, because when you as a leader can transform your experience around trust and your own self-worth, you increase your agility by fourfolds. Like, you're agile, your decision making is on point. You're able to be honest and transparent with yourself and your team, your investors, your clients, whomever, because you're not attached to the outcome. The outcome is the outcome. And you have it in you to shift the outcome the next time because you're gathering data. You're not stuck in, oh, we lost, or I got rejected, they said no, or we made a mistake, or it's okay. Doesn't mean I'm wrong or I'm bad or I'm terrible. It just means our approach, the way we approached it didn't work. That's it. Doesn't mean anything about our identity. And just like that right wrong piece, that's a huge facet that pokes at our trust and our ability to understand how worthy and valuable we are, because we're constantly thinking about how wrong and how bad either we are or someone else is. Because even you thinking these thoughts about other people, judging other people, it's a reflection of how you feel about yourself. And so we call it a small hinge that swings big doors. Because if you ever look at a door, the hinges are way smaller than the door. And that's what trust and self-worth are. You don't need to read all these books and go to all these seminars and have all this coaching. When you're able to transform your experience with trust and your self-worth, it just swings so much open, and it has a ripple effect. Your team and your colleagues and your clients, they all catch on because we're not judging ourselves. We're not beating ourselves up. We're not feeling undeserving. Because if we're handing over or presenting a $50,000 proposal, but thinking, oh, I hope they say yes, that energy is not going to bring back and reciprocate back into a complete confident yes.
What if some of those insecurities are legitimate and they are real weaknesses that are going to, okay. So
They are.
what happens in
Yeah.
that case?
First off, if you feel that way, it's legitimate. There's no illegitimate. It's just the way you're resourcing and regulating yourself through. Are you believing it as truth and only truth? That's it. I am not worthy. I am not smart enough. Is that the truth of what's really going on? Or is there so much more out there that's available that could also be the truth? Okay. Because when you identify with, I am not good enough, my deck is wrong, I'm a failure, I'm never going to close another deal, or this company's, you're identifying as that. And it's not legitimate. Now that piece is not legitimate, but you're feeling it is legit. I'm feeling it. So there's something there, always legitimate. But the reality and the truth and the actuals, because that feeling is an assumption. All of our feelings are assumptions, by the way. They're all assumptions. They're our interpretation of whatever it is we're experiencing in the moment. Because haven't you felt some way, had a feeling, and then 5 minutes later you feel different about the same thing because you collected some data, you collected some actuals, or it just, I don't know, sometimes it just magically shifts, which is so awesome. But yeah, so the legitimacy of our feelings is, yep, all of them are legitimate, but it's how you resource and how you regulate and navigate through to something useful. Or you can sit in the beat up and the insecurity of perfectionism, comparison, not enoughness, whatever that is. And I really hope, listeners, that's not what you're doing. Well, to be honest, a lot of us are doing that, but I hope you have some form of resourcing to navigate through, because that first form of resourcing is self-awareness. Oh, I just noticed I just thought I wasn't good enough, or I noticed I was comparing myself to him, or I just noticed like I could have turned this in an hour ago, but I'm still like tweaking it and doing all this.
You created the self-wealth advantage framework. What's the core principles? How does this help leaders overcome these insecurities and these challenges?
First of all, what I called it helps them immediately because self-worth is rarely talked about in professional settings. Yeah. It's more of like a personal development or like a self-help type topic. So just having the courage to, and the provocateur in me, like, because one of the concepts of how I'm trained and certified to coach, we say name it to tame it. So if we're talking around it and trying to sugarcoat what's actually going on, how are we going to resolve it? So the name and the title of it is one. Number two is there's a framework. So it's not like we're going out into the existential world of our feelings. There's step one is identify what is and what isn't. Step two is understanding that piece. Step 3 and 4, I put them together. It's reconciling and resolving that. And I want to jump back to step 2 because most leaders and most type A people, most driven, ambitious people, they want to skip part 2, which is understanding what has you feel that way and where it's coming from. Because once they identify in step 1, they want to jump right into reconciling and resolving. They want to get right to work, which I love. Yet your results may not sustain themselves or might take longer if you don't understand where those feelings are coming from and what causes them in you and what you're making up about them. And then the final and fifth step is the transformation. Because even if you do something once or twice, you may not be transforming it into trust or into agility or into innovation, whatever it is that you want to transform this insecurity into. So that's the final piece. So that's what works for them.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santablian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.